This is Birthing at Home, a podcast. I'm Elsie, your host. I'm a home birth mum of 2 little boys. I'm a mental health nurse and the co-creator of Home Birth Victoria. If you want to learn more about me, the podcast, or my work, check out www.birthingathome.apodcast. Before we begin, I would like to acknowledge the Wurundjeri people who are the traditional custodians of the land I'm recording on in Naarm, Melbourne, Australia. I would also like to acknowledge that Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples have been birthing at home on country for tens of thousands of years prior to the British invasion and acknowledge that sovereignty has never been ceded. This is episode 74, and it's shared by Eliza, who's living on the land of the Western Kangoulu peoples. She shares with us her traumatic C-section in remote Queensland and how for her second baby, initially influenced by the lack of access to any other supported birth model, she chose to free birth and had an extremely healing and magical vaginal birth after cesarean. Thanks so much to Eliza for being so open and seeing the value in story sharing. We do talk about traumatic events and obstetric violence in this episode, so please be mindful of this when listening. Enjoy. Welcome, Eliza, to Birthing at Home, a podcast.
Thank you very much. Happy to be here.
Thank you for joining me. I actually, I said before that I was reading back through your initial email and I saw that you emailed back in like November or December, and now it's obviously June. So your second baby is, I think in the email she was 3 months old or something maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah, so obviously time has passed. So thank you so much for joining me tonight. Are you able to give a little bit of info about who you are, who's in your family, where you're located?
Yeah, sure. So I'm Eliza and I live with my partner Sean, and we have 2 little girls together. I have Nina, who just turned 3, and we also have Lola, who is 9 months old, and we live in a tiny mining town in central Queensland. It's really in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's a really wonderful little life we live out here. There's not much going on in terms of where we live, so there's just a lot of time outdoors with the kids. We obviously are pretty lucky to have beautiful weather year round, so yeah, it's just a really wonderful place to raise little kids, and yeah, we're very happy out here.
Yeah, we were just reflecting to anybody listening that I'm currently wearing like a jumper and like a very warm dressing gown, and Eliza's just wearing a singlet and got sunburnt today. So
in the middle of winter, might I add, yeah.
So we're living in quite different places, but yeah, so cool that you live where you live. You know, it makes me, in some ways jealous because, yeah, I would just love some wide open spaces and just, you know, some peace. And as you would know, having lived in Melbourne, it's a bit wild here sometimes. So
it is. It's really it's quite the contrast. You're often lucky to see another car on the road on the drive
wow.
to, you know, town centre.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a very, very quiet. It's a really safe place. We've got a great community of people around us, and a lot of like-minded young families with young kids doing the same thing. So it's great. Yeah.
Yeah, amazing. And so when you, I guess, before we start with the birth story of your 3-year-old Nina, like growing up, did you know about birthing at home? Like, what was your sort of understanding of pregnancy, if you remember?
To be honest, it really wasn't a part of my world. It wasn't, I didn't know anyone that had a baby at home. My knowledge around birth in general was pretty minimal. And it really wasn't until I was pregnant with Nina and started sort of going down the birth rabbit hole that I started sort of just understanding the physiology of birth, let alone sort of, you know, different spaces that people birth in. And I think that had a lot to do with a couple of my really good friends here where we live. One of my dearest and bestest friends is actually a midwife, a hospital midwife, but nonetheless we share sort of a similar philosophy on birth. So I think I was really lucky that I had a couple of people in my sort of space that we're real birth nerds, and then that sort of just put me on the path to eventually discover home birth. Yeah.
Yeah, cool. And so you were already living in the tiny town that you live in when you were pregnant with Nina?
Yes, we were already here, yeah.
And so what is, apart from, I imagine even private midwives are hard to find / impossible.
Pretty well impossible, yeah. So, so we don't have, there's no private midwives within I think you have to travel to Mackay or Airlie Beach, which from us is about almost roughly a 5-hour trip out. For a private midwife, and even in those locations, like there's not many available. So if you're sort of set on having a home birth, you really need to book in. With a private midwife, that is, and obviously you have to factor in the travel and having to stay somewhere other than home. So. You're between a rock and a hard place when it comes to choosing a place to birth other than a hospital.
Yeah. And so how far away is like the nearest hospital where you can give birth at from where you guys are?
Yeah, so that's an hour drive from where we are. Yeah. So it's a pretty small, pretty low risk hospital, but we do have a maternity ward there. So
Yeah, and that's the one in Emerald.
That's in Emerald, yes.
Yeah. Okay. So are you able to give us like a bit of an overview with your pregnancy or like your journey with Nina? Obviously, Nina was born in hospital. Are you able to take us through that bit of, journey?
Yeah, sure. I'll try. I'll try to contain it.
That's all right.
But so pretty well we fell pregnant with Nina. We decided we wanted to start a family. We were fortunate that all happened pretty quickly. And it's really, honestly, when I reflect upon that time and the person I was then compared to the person I am now and how far I've come, it's just wild. But I remember it was sort of like, right, we're trying for a baby, we're pregnant. Now what do I do? Who do I call? I remember almost just feeling a bit lost, like who's there to direct me? Like what appointments do I need to schedule in? It was very much, I was I had the approach of just sort of being a good girl, doing what I was meant to do, taking advantage of like all the screenings and all the tests, and I just wanted to do everything by the book and right. So I ended up, we have a child health centre here in town, and the lady who's worked there has worked there for like 40 years, and she's also a midwife. So it's not uncommon that if you're pregnant in town, you sort of, she'll be your primary person that you see throughout the pregnancy. So, I was happy to sort of be under her care. And then, the first, I want to say 18 to 20 weeks maybe, I was really ill, which I know isn't uncommon, but it really, knocked me for six. Like I was vomiting all day, every day.
Wow.
I was struggling with sleep because I'd be woken up during the night multiple times a night with just this feeling of sickness and needing to vomit. I think that was the worst part, that I wasn't just nauseous, I just vomited constantly. So that was really draining. But then past that point, my pregnancy was fantastic. Like I felt good. I'm a fit and healthy person, and I was still getting out and about, and it was just a really nice pregnancy.
And so did you have to travel to Emerald for some appointments, or was it mostly with that midwife?
Yeah, so most of my appointments were here in town with the local midwife, but any ultrasounds that I had done, I travelled into Emerald. And I think I had I had the blood, what's it called? Like the blood test that you have really early on, you pay an arm and a leg for, and
the NIPS test.
Yeah. So we didn't want to know Nina's gender, but again, it just sort of takes me back to, I just wanted to make sure everything was okay, and that it wasn't like I was paranoid, or I just wanted to do everything I possibly could. And I think it very much feeds into that, good girl mentality, like just,
Yeah.
So I'd go in for, when I needed blood tests or scans, but I hadn't actually had a visit with the hospital or met with anyone there until, I think I must have been, is it around 20 weeks maybe you go in? And it's really just to tick a box. Like they just look at your book and, jot your name down. So
to like sort of book you into the hospital, really.
Pretty much, yeah. But even that was just really like it was in and out. I didn't actually get to see anything or understand how things worked there. It was pretty much, all right, cool, just do your general checks and out you go. So, that was at around 20 weeks. And then I just continued on seeing the midwife here in town. Apart from feeling really good throughout my pregnancy, one thing I just want to sort of make note of at the start was I have always, for quite a few years now, I've had, I don't want to say issues, but my blood pressure has always been on the higher end of things. So it's never been cause for concern where it's needed to be medicated or it's sort of in that hypertension bracket. But it is, I guess, for my age and for my weight, like it's higher than perhaps you would expect it to be.
Yeah.
So, and also naturally when I walk into a medical setting, it
goes up. Yeah.
It's uncommon.
No.
So that was sort of noted from like my 12-week appointment with this midwife to say, hey, look, you haven't taken my blood pressure yet. Don't be shocked if it is a little bit higher. And that was something she was really good at managing throughout when I say managing, she worked with me on that. So we would, she was happy to sort of give me cards and I would take it a few times a day at home when I was sort of in a calmer environment.
Yeah.
They were always good. So, so I would do that. And then I had a slight, I don't want to call it a bleed. It was more like, it was like very, very, very faint spotting, like the lightest pink spotting at about 30 weeks, I think. And again, being sort of that first time mum and, wanting to do the right thing, I sort of ummed and ahed and I thought, it's not a lot of blood, but what do I do? So I did decide to drive into the hospital and they put me on sort of, the constant monitoring and checked everything and everything sort of appeared to be okay. And I remember the doctor saying to me, look, we're just going to, we'll take a swab and we'll just run a few tests. And that was sort of the extent of it. So I didn't think to ask what those tests were or think how that could possibly impact things.
Sure, yeah.
And then a few days later or a week later, I got a phone call from the hospital to say, hey, just letting you know, your test results have come back. You have tested positive for GBS. And, instantly like my heart was racing and I'm like, oh my God, what, had no idea what GBS was.
Yeah, oh my gosh.
Whoa, like what's GBS? Do I need to be concerned? What do I need to do? And the midwife I spoke to was like, oh, no, like nothing to worry about. Quite common. It just means when you're coming in labour, you'll need to receive antibiotics.
Oh my gosh, so blasé.
So blasé, right?
Just a little bit of antibiotics.
What do you mean antibiotics? Like what, you'll need to receive antibiotics every 4 hours until you give birth or.
Yeah, it sounds something like that, yeah.
So naturally I got off the phone and like turned to Google immediately.
Yeah.
And it was something I think it's interesting when I look back because I think that was the point for me where, I guess a test or something had revealed something to me where I had to then sort of make a conscious decision about, okay, well, how do I feel about this? And let's look into the risks and let's make an informed decision about it. So the more I went down the GBS rabbit hole, the more I was really confident in my decision to decline antibiotics. I don't know if you've heard of, but there's a wonderful midwife called Sarah Wickham. I think
Oh,
she's
of
a UK
course.
lady. Yeah, she's awesome. And she writes a lot about GBS. So
Just a whole book.
yes, she has a whole book, yeah. So I really, really sort of delved into her content. And yeah, she ultimately, I sort of made my decision based off the information that she shared. So I had that sort of in the back of my mind. I'd communicated that to my midwife that, come to labour, I'm saying no to antibiotics.
Yeah.
And that was that. And then, my pregnancy continued. I guess the further along I went, I started to sort of shift from this I remember at the start thinking I was just going to pretty well show up in labour and say, okay, here I am.
Yeah.
Do with me what you will. To really starting to question things, understanding birth on more of a physiological level. I got really into Sarah Buckley's work, Rachel Reed's work. So I started to, you can probably tell, like this shift started.
Yeah.
So, sort of in that last trimester in particular, I was feeling really, really empowered when it came to birth. And, I felt good. And then I had an appointment, I had a growth scan at 36 weeks, which I remember questioning, but I think they, I questioned it with the hospital and they said, oh, you're a high risk you're a high risk person. And I remember saying, what about me is high risk? And they said, well, you're a first time mum. And I don't know if it's a state to state thing or how that works, but basically all first time mums fall in this category of because you haven't given birth before. So apparently you're,
oh my gosh, you might be faulty.
You might be faulty, exactly.
Oh my God, it's ridiculous.
So I went ahead and I ended up having this growth scan at 36 weeks. Just as the scan I'd had prior at 20 weeks, everything was fine. Nina was, I think, sitting on maybe like the 50th percentile. Everything was pretty standard.
Yeah.
And then I think the following week, so I would have been 37 weeks pregnant, is when everything sort of shifted for me again. So I had an appointment with the hospital, and this is the second appointment I've had my entire pregnancy.
Wow. Yeah.
And it was pretty much just to go over the results of this growth scan. And I walked into this consult room with one of the doctors, and at Emerald Hospital, I think at the time there might have been 3 or 4 doctors. They're all female. I'd had the previous interaction I'd had with one of the doctors. She was really great. This particular doctor was, honestly, she was awful.
Wow.
It was such an awful experience. And I sort of went in there with, I was feeling good. I didn't have that feeling of, get this baby out of me. I was just very much enjoying these final moments of my pregnancy and, just waiting it out. And so I went in and she first of all sort of went through the scan and everything was okay. And then she started, flicking through my little book. And the first thing she noticed was my blood pressure. And so we hadn't taken my blood pressure at this point. She'd just seen the notes in the book.
Yeah.
And I explained to her that, no, we were managing this with the midwife I was seeing. I was, taking readings 3 times a day at home. Yeah. And that was all fine.
Are you able to share roughly what it is? Like when you're, I guess.
I think they might have to pull up the numbers. I think it might, so remind me, but I think hypertension is it 140 over 90?
Yeah, yeah.
And I might have been towards the end of my pregnancy. I just want to note as well, because it did increase slightly. It didn't jump dramatically. Like I guess you might see more might be more common in cases of preeclampsia. It just sort of started to climb slightly, but it might have been around 130 over 80, 85 it might have.
Yeah, okay.
So it was on the higher end of things, but yeah, it hadn't actually gone over that sort of marker.
Yeah.
But it was something.
So did you have, like, in the end of your pregnancy, now I'm just curious because I'm a nurse, I'm just curious from like a nurse perspective, did it go over like 140 at the end?
Yeah, so disappointment.
Disappointment. Well, I think it's got my blood pressure over 140 already and I'm not even there.
Disappointment. And you maybe see why. So, yeah, so it had always just been sort of hovering around that area. But I should note, that was when I was at my appointment. So when I was at home, I could get a reading that might be 110 over 70. Like, it really did shift. But there was definitely, I will mention that there was definitely like a steady incline as my pregnancy sort of went on in that last trimester. But I was so aware of it. And I remember this is where this fight started. And, I felt good. I was really aware of my body. I had no other signs of preeclampsia. I knew I was okay. But anyway, so she saw, she's looking through and she's like, she wasn't happy at all with the numbers. And I've just got to think back, sorry.
It's all right.
And then, so we ended up talking about this and then
so you're by yourself during this appointment as well?
No, sorry, I was with my partner. So Sean and I together. Yeah. And then, she pretty well jumped straight to, well, you're 37 weeks. So based on your blood pressure, I'd like to induce you today. Like, we've just come in for a day, we've had to travel an hour. We've done sort of the shopping and we've popped into the hospital to, check over the scan. And I was like, whoa, no, like what, sorry, I don't understand. Where is this coming from? Yeah. Well, you're 37 weeks now and look, your blood pressure is very much on the higher end of things. I'd like to induce you today. I said, I don't understand where you're coming from. And she said, well, things can change really quickly. We can have an alive baby right now, but we can have a dead baby by the end of the day. Yeah.
Oh, God.
Yeah. So I just immediately, you can imagine what my blood pressure is doing now.
Yeah.
So we start having this chat, and then before we go too much further, she goes, right, I'll get you to lay up on the bed and we'll take your blood pressure.
Oh, my God.
Imagine it was like the worst reading I'd ever received because I'm here. I don't like confrontation, and she's just laid it all out. Like, I don't want you to leave today. We want to induce you. Or I want to induce you.
Oh, my God.
And, I said, look, I have no other marker. So, I'm happy for you to, do a urine test today. What else?
And do the actual tests for preeclampsia, not just say,
absolutely. It was
here's a blood pressure result after I've just told you that your baby could die.
Right. And it's so interesting because I've sort of now gone down, a rabbit hole when it comes to hypertension and preeclampsia. And there's this term that keeps popping up, which I think is a little bit funny, but it's preeclampsia. And that is very much where I think I was at. It's like preeclampsia. Yeah. Well, we're not there yet. So can we, look, I'm a reasonable person. Can we just make a plan? So we decided that I would come in. I think initially she wanted me to come in every single day, Monday to Friday, to have my bloods taken, to have my urine tested and my blood pressure done. And this is how she sold it to me. She said, well, if you're not willing to be induced this week or today, you're going to have to come into the hospital every single day. That's an hour drive from where you live. That's going to be an incredible inconvenience to you. You might need to look at staying at, they had accommodation across the road, which might have been Red Cross or something like that, where you can pay for a small amount. She said, you might have to stay in the accommodation across the road to make it convenient for you. She literally just laid it all out like that, like saying, this is really going to be a total burden.
Oh, my
to you.
gosh.
And I was like, no, let me go away. Let me just get my thoughts together and my feelings, because I was so overwhelmed at this point.
Yeah.
And then, you know, I'll come back to you. So we left that appointment and we sort of stayed around town for a little bit, and then she called me about an hour later and I said, look, I've made the decision that that's not going to happen. I will speak with my midwife in town, and I'm happy to come into the hospital maybe twice a week and get those couple of things done, because the midwife that I saw locally was able to do my blood pressure. She was able to test my urine. She could obviously sort of see how I was tracking.
Yeah.
The only thing I couldn't do locally was blood. So so that's sort of where we came to. And then over those next few weeks, it was like I was just fighting the hospital. It was awful. So my local midwife, although she's been doing it for 40 years, she's pretty old school and not necessarily like up to date with the most evidence-based information.
That happens. Yeah.
But I will give it to her. She was fantastic in the way that she supported me through that. So I would go into her every day on a Saturday and a Sunday. She quite literally lives behind the clinic. So she would open it up for me in her pajamas and come in and she'd turn the lights off for me, and she'd let me lay on the bed for like 5 minutes just to relax. And then she'd come in to take my blood pressure just to like really help me out.
Get a proper reading. Yeah.
So she was really good in that regard. And then so the hospital started sort of, this particular doctor would, you know, leave me voicemails, and I would almost try and avoid her when I had to go, if she was in, when I had to go into the hospital to get bloods done.
Of course.
And it was just those final weeks of my pregnancy they were awful. I don't like conflict, and I felt like I was having to really defend myself and my pregnancy. I felt fine. I remember I kept saying that to people. I'm like, I feel fine. And it was like no one gave a shit. They were just like, well, you know, we're looking at this, and I'm like, yes, but I'm not there yet. There's no other markers of preeclampsia. My blood pressure is still within an okay range. Can we just keep going? Like, I'm almost there. And then I can't quite remember the conversation that sort of led to this decision, but it just got to a point where I just felt so defeated that I ended up agreeing to a stretch and sweep, which I know for some people a stretch and sweep is a stretch and sweep, right? It's sort of like I say this in like air quotations, like a natural induction method. Yeah. Now I don't think there's any such natural induction method.
No way.
And I almost sort of like this particular point I pinpoint, because I think that's where things really started to go south.
Yeah. So how many weeks roughly were you when you said the stretch and sweep?
I was 40 weeks pregnant. It was
okay. Yeah. So you fought for like 3 weeks basically.
It was awful. It was honestly awful. I remember just being in constant tears over it. I was just so distressed. Like, this is not how the final weeks of my pregnancy should be. You know, I wanted to go into birth really like sure of myself and feeling calm, and I was just in all sorts. I felt like I had no control. My phone was blowing up constantly. I remember actually leaving a hospital appointment, and this doctor had said to me, right, when you get home this afternoon, I want you to call the local midwife straight away and book yourself in for, I don't know, it might have been the next day, to see her. And I'd gotten home that afternoon and I was so overwhelmed, and I thought, no, I'm not going to call. If I do, I'll call tomorrow. Yeah. And then like about 5 o'clock that afternoon, getting a call from the local midwife who said to me, I answered the phone, and she said, Eliza, do you have something you need to tell me? She was disciplining me. Yeah. And it's like, what do you mean? She's like, well, I've just had a phone call from the hospital. You were meant to call and book in an appointment for tomorrow. It's like, well, I'll do that when I'm when I decide to do that. Like the fact that, it's wild. It's just
Oh my gosh.
wild to me. I just felt like
it's like very is it I forget the word, where like people treat you like a child in pregnancy, like you're, this precious little
literally
virgin package that,
seriously, and
protect.
I felt like I was being taken advantage of at that
Yes.
time. I think this is where I really started to grow a backbone. Now the me now would have just told everyone to fuck off.
Yeah.
But I was just it was so important for me just to be polite, and I didn't want to be a nuisance. I wanted people to like me. Oh, that's just honestly pathetic even coming out of my mouth now, but that's how I felt.
It's very common though. So common. Yeah.
So common, unfortunately. But so anyway, getting ahead of myself.
I can't believe that happened.
I know. Being told off.
Yeah, you're not my mum.
Yeah, so I had a stretch and sweep at 40 weeks, which, a stretch and sweep's a stretch and sweep, not the most comfortable thing. And then 48 hours after that, so I must have been 40 and 2, I lost my mucus plug and then more came out. And I thought, okay, things had shifted. I'd had no other sort of early labour things going on, like everything was pretty normal until that point. And then I think it was that later that afternoon, I started to feel like things were going on, and we made the decision so this was on a Friday night. Yeah, we made the decision to drive into Emerald, get a hotel and just chill there and just see how we go. Because if things were progressing, then I was close enough to sort of go into hospital. Or if they didn't, then I didn't go straight into hospital.
Yeah.
So we did that. We went out for dinner and tried to just keep doing normal things. And by the next morning, they had sort of my contractions had totally fizzled out and there was nothing left, nothing more going on. And then I called the hospital because I think they were expecting me to go into hospital the night before.
Yeah.
To say what had happened. They said, look, come back in. We'll do another stretch and sweep. We'll do a really good one for you, really get things going. Like, great. So we went in. They did another stretch and sweep. I went home, and then by about 1:00 that afternoon, I started having regular contractions. So that's really when I guess labour really started. And then we did the same thing. We ended up going back into Emerald. They were coming more regularly, contractions at this point. So we went back in, we booked the same hotel again. I was labouring really well there. I was sort of going from the toilet to the TENS machine. I had done hypnobirthing during my pregnancy, so I had my affirmations in. And then, things were progressing. I got to that point where I really just was sort of out of it. I couldn't communicate with Sean, and we made the decision to go into the hospital. Yeah. And the minute I got into the car, things stalled, like nothing was going on. And then we pulled up to the hospital, and I had sort of one random contraction in the car park, and we walked in, and pretty well from that point forward, my contractions were really sporadic. They were all over the place. Yeah. Which, I know is not uncommon at all with the change of environment. And I arrived, and it was about 8:00 at this point at night. There was no one else on the ward. I had two beautiful young midwives there who had set up the birth suite, and I walked in and there were salt lamps and everything was dark. Wow. And they were sort of waiting for me, and it was really lovely. And then this particular doctor was on call.
Oh,
no. But the girls they did what they could, but they did a pretty good job at trying to protect me. Protect probably isn't the right word, but shelter me, I guess, from a lot of that, because I know that she was on the phone.
Wow.
A lot throughout my labour. Just seeing what was going on and giving instructions. So when I first got in there, I remember them trying to really calm me down, and the first thing they did was put the cannula in my hand. Is it a cannula? Is that what
yeah.
And it might seem like a really minor thing, but I remember that being the most uncomfortable thing, because all I wanted to do during a contraction was to be on all
bend your wrist.
And the minute I'd put pressure on my hand, my brain, right? It wasn't a contraction. Like my brain couldn't just focus on what was happening. It would go to this sort of more pathological pain in my hand, and it was awful. Like I was getting so upset, and I felt so out of control because I just felt like I couldn't drop in. I couldn't. I had my tracks in my ears. I just couldn't drop into what was happening because of this pain in my hand.
Yeah.
And then, so things sort of started to pick up, I guess, a little bit more. I was in the shower at this point. Sean was just, I should just mention, he is just the most wonderful support ever. Honestly, everyone says that, but I have lucked out, and he was beautiful. So he just sort of held the shower head on my back, and I was just on all fours in the shower for ages. And I remember asking I wanted a water birth, or I wanted to at least labour in water. I asked for the pool to be set up, and I remember them sort of deterring me from that and saying, look, maybe just wait a little bit, it can slow things down. And then it got to a point where I was like, no, I want that set up. So I remember I could hear the water running. They were setting it up outside in the birth suite, but I was still in the shower at this point and couldn't see what was going on.
Yeah.
And at some point, I remember someone telling me, it might have been one of the midwives, it might have been Sean, that they'd been instructed to deflate the pool, that I couldn't get in the pool. And I was just beside myself. I was like, what do you mean? And the doctor on call wasn't comfortable with me being in the pool with my blood pressure. And
that makes me so angry, Eliza.
It literally I can just remember this moment of absolute defeat where I was like, it was out of my control. I'm like, what do you mean? And I can hear them now outside emptying the pool, draining the pool, because this doctor had called in and said, no, not happy, not comfortable for you to do that. And I guess the problem, it's a real power play thing, because if, you know how some birth suites have an actual, a permanent spa into. If that were the case, I probably could have just said, get out of my hair, I'm getting in there. But with an actual blow-up pool that they have to bring in, they have to set up, you really, I just felt powerless in that regard. Yeah. What was I going to do? Go out there and start pumping it up and, it was
so
just
true,
taken away.
Oh my gosh. I have so many words in mind to describe that.
So that was awful, because the water at that point was just the most incredible pain relief. I just knew I needed to be submerged in water. And then, sort of things started to fizzle off again. The midwives were trying different spinning babies things with me. They had the rebozo. I had one sort of stood up on the bed, giving my belly a good update. They were really wonderful. They were going out and Googling new techniques and coming in, so let's try this, just trying to get things going again. And then it was getting to the point where I was just really defeated. I started asking for the epidural because at this point it was like I'd sort of have really consistent contractions and then they would just disappear and I wouldn't have one for 20 minutes, and then I'd have a random one and then it would go away again, and then they'd be more back to back, and it just felt like I couldn't get in my groove. It was just all over the show. And then so I think 7:30 came around the next morning. They did a cervical check. I can't quite remember what I was at. I think it might have been maybe about 5 centimetres. Convinced me to, try and break my waters to get things moving along. They could feel sort of a bag of waters there, which, if you know much about that, in hindsight, that really doesn't. There's no real evidence to suggest that that speeds up labour.
Yeah. And so at this time you've got the epidural on board?
No, not yet.
Not just yet. Okay.
Sorry. So I was still asking for the epidural, but I was sort of just saying, let's try your waters first, and let's see if that just makes things a little bit more consistent.
Yeah.
So they did this, and then there was there was a shift change, and then they broke my waters. So it's about 7:30 in the morning, and my two beautiful midwives left. I had two new midwives come in.
Yeah.
And the main midwife, she was a temp, a fill-in. Like they quite often, we are regional, they'll fly people in from other places.
Yeah.
And she really just couldn't have cared less. I remember they'd broken my waters. I was stood up having a contraction. She was talking to me, getting frustrated because she couldn't get the blood pressure cuff on properly, and I was putting my hand up to say, can you stop talking and let me just get through this contraction? And then she was sort of huffing and puffing, and then I went back into the shower, and I think at this point I again was asking for the epidural, and she said to me, we need it might have been like, you might know more, but like 20 minutes or so of constant monitoring before the anaesthetist can come down and give you the epidural.
Yeah.
So I wanted to be in the shower because once my waters had gone, things had come on hard and fast. It's sort of gone from like having these, nice waves of nothing to just constant every couple of minutes.
Yeah.
And she was getting so frustrated with me because I had I wasn't on the bed. I had like the portable one strapped around my tummy.
Yeah.
And it kept slipping, and it was picking up maternal heart rate over baby's heart rate. And she'd come in and say, can you just stay still? Stay still. It is slipping. I need you to stay still, or I need you to get on the bed. Like, that is how I was being spoken to. And I can remember apologising, like so beside myself that, they were so angry at me because I was asking for this thing. And
oh my gosh, that's atrocious.
Yeah. And then I ended up coming out. I had the anaesthetist came down. I had the epidural. I sort of, obviously, things calmed down from there. I had a little bit of trouble with the epidural where it wasn't working on one side of my body, so I could feel contractions on one half and the other. And then, and then by this point, the doctor was on day shift and she was coming in and out of my room, and she kept mentioning Synto and wanting to put me on that. And I kept declining just to try and speed things up. I think I had another couple of cervical checks, and she'd word it like, right, I'll give you another 4 hours to dilate another, 2 to 3 centimetres, whatever it was.
As if you have control over it.
Right?
Like, oh, I'm sorry, I'll just try harder.
And I can remember, like, this is just so sad, but I remember, like, putting my earphones in and listening to, like, a meditation track and just almost begging my baby to just hurry up, just come on, can we just, when she comes in, can we just make sure, I know it sounds ridiculous, but just make sure that we're there because, I'm just trying to get through this at this point. Nothing had gone to plan. It was just, everything felt so out of control, and I felt like I had no support around me apart from my partner, Sean, and he was equally as traumatised.
Shocked, yeah.
And then, skipping forward a little bit so we're now I went in on the Friday night on the Saturday night. We are now Sunday night at this point.
Wow, yeah.
And I remember at some point, so I had the epidural, but I could still sort of move around. I remember being able to stand on my feet and I could feel it at some point, this like pressure. I thought it was pressure in my bum. I thought I need to poo. This is that feeling. And they did a cervical check, and the midwife went, yay, like you're 10 centimetres, like you're ready to go, you're ready to push. And I remember just being absolutely exhausted at this point. And like, righto, this is happening. And again, I'd sort of said, I don't want any coach pushing. I understand I've had the epidural, but like, let me just try and do as I can. And I still had some control over what was going on with my body. I could feel things. Nonetheless, they, were holding my ankles up like this, and it was 1, 2, 3, 4, like yelling in my face. We had the music turned right up, and I was pushing with all my might. This baby was coming out.
Yeah. And
I remember Sean saying, babe, I can see the head. Like, I can see the head. I can see the hair. And I was like, I'm there. And in my brain, I had been pushing for 15 minutes.
Yeah.
But it had been 2 hours. And I still can't even fathom that. It felt like I was pushing for 15 minutes.
Yeah.
And then at obviously that 2-hour mark, it was the weirdest thing. It was like, tools down, like everyone just sort of backed off. The doctor came in, and I was just so out of my body at this point. Like, I think the combination of just being exhausted, the drugs, just feeling so defeated and like, what the fuck is going on? Like, this whole birth has just gone totally, it's just not what I'd planned for.
Yeah.
And she came in and said, right, we're going to need to take you up for a cesarean. And I remember just saying to her, what? Like, why? Like, she said, well, you've pushed for 2 hours now. And she did another cervical check, and she said, oh, look, I'm actually going to say you're more 8 centimetres with a cervical lip. And she said, baby's head's not quite in the most prime position. And I said, I've been doing this now for this long. Like, I've just been, like, you're telling me that you can see their head there. Why can't I just keep going? And her words were, your uterus has worked overtime. It's done all it can do. And at this point, so I'd obviously had the constant monitoring on because of baby's heart rate was fine, I should mention. There was no major D cells. Everything was fine, and I couldn't understand. I remember just fighting with this doctor and saying, I don't get it. She said, well, and I said, what about the drip? Like, put me on the Synto.
Yeah.
And she said, no, that's not an option now. Like, it's a cesarean. Like, here's the paperwork you need to sign here. And at this point, I just totally and utterly left my body. And I can remember them leaving the room, and I was just screaming and crying at Sean, because you just don't think, when that's something you don't plan for, you don't think will happen to you, you really don't think it'll happen to you. And I was beside myself. I remember saying to Sean, they're going to cut my baby out of me. I was so upset, and you're sort of between a rock and a hard place. What do you do? Like, of course you're gonna go through with it. So they wheeled me up for surgery, and I went in. I had the most severe shakes. Something I didn't know that now I know is more common, but they obviously strapped my arms down on each side. And it was at that point where I literally felt myself leave my body, because I could not fathom what was happening to me. And I remember saying to them before they took me in, sorry.
It's okay.
I said to them before they took me in, if this is what you're doing, then at least give me some dignity. Like, I want delayed core clamping. I want the baby, put on my chest immediately, skin to skin. I want music playing. I had, we went in. They'd obviously had their sort of on-call doctors come in, because it was about 4 a.m. at this point on the Monday morning. And they were just chatting about their weekends. I felt like, what the fuck? I'm literally lying here. I cannot control my body. I had such severe shakes. I was so exhausted that the nurse or doctor next to my head was putting a warm cloth over my eyes and saying, darling, just close your eyes.
Holy fuck, Eliza.
I just couldn't. I was like, this isn't happening. Like, I can't.
Oh, my God.
I just wasn't even there, and I was looking at Sean. He was next to me, and had his, all I could see was these beautiful blue eyes looking at me, and they were just full of tears. Like they were just red. He was just trying to reassure me with a smile. I could, it was just awful. Anyway, I remember Nina was born, and at least they sort of, they held her up, and, I saw that she was a girl. And then the first comment from this doctor, the same doctor that delivered her, she said, "Oh, this one's going to need some Botox." Look at that frown, like trying to make fun of it. And I was just like, I cannot believe can people not see what's going on? I am so highly distressed. This is the birth of my baby. No one is giving me the dignity.
Holy shit.
How are you making jokes about, and then I remember thinking, this sounds silly now, but I remember thinking at the time, because I could barely see with all the drugs that they pumped through. I remember thinking, is there something wrong with her? I can't even focus. I can't even see her. She was fine. They were just trying to, have a joke, make light of the situation. That was the birth of my first baby, and
that is literally one of the most disgusting things I've ever.
Yeah.
Holy shit! Oh my gosh!
And there was no delayed core clamping. Well, at least to my standards, I think they've noted it in the hospital notes, but it was pretty well. I don't know, about 30 seconds, and then they've taken her away. And then I didn't get to, see her again until recovery. And I remember it must have been as they were stitching me up, them saying to me, the doctor said to me, now because your waters were broken for X amount of time, we're going to suggest that she have the antibiotics because of the risk of infection with GBS. So I had declined the antibiotics to receive receive them during labour. And they wanted to give them directly to Nina. And at this point, I just went, whatever. And I can remember being in recovery and just hearing her screaming in the other room. And they brought her out, and she was she had a little beanie on, and her arm was boarded up with the drip in her arm.
Cannula,
yeah. And then I remember being so incredibly hot. I was just lying on this bed like I needed to pull everything off. I was just naked, and I was so hot. I was begging for ice. I could barely talk. Again, I'm assuming that's an effect of the drugs, and just pure exhaustion. Like, it reminded me when I was like a kid and you'd go to a sleepover and you were, trying to stay up as late as you could, and like you get to that point where your eyes are so heavy that you can't possibly stay awake. That was what I was fighting with, but with the birth of my daughter and trying to hold her. And remember they put her on me, and I had the shake so severely I could barely hold her, and I was so desperately trying to get her to breastfeed, and she was slipping. And I think she took to the breast a little bit. It wouldn't necessarily call it a feed, but she sort of just had a little bit of a feel around. And then they wheeled us down to our room. So she was born at 4 a.m. And then, of course, by the time we got back down to the room, there was, I guess, a shift change again. And they obviously bring everyone around to sort of give them a rundown on what's happened overnight. And we got into our room, and then immediately there was about 6 people standing at the end of my bed debriefing what it just, not to me, but amongst themselves.
The bedside handover. Far out.
And all I wanted to do was sleep at this point as well. And then also a midwife coming in and saying, "Look, Eliza, we need to try and get her to feed." So that was a whole process. And I think I had a little bit of colostrum, which I think, I hate even admitting this, but I remember just saying to them, like, I can't, like, just like give it to her in a syringe because I can't even right now. And then later on, the doctor came in, this same doctor.
Did she ever leave this place?
And no, right?
Oh my gosh.
So she came in, and she stood at the end of my bed and she said to me, she was trying to justify what had gone down. She said, so Nina's actually on the 20th percentile. Your waters were quite murky. And I can't think, there was one other thing that she said. And, you know, she'd mentioned something else and said, so, you know, I'm sort of, I think, oh, and that was the other thing. Sorry, she had a nuchal cord around her neck, so she wasn't going to come down. Again, that's not, like, now with what I know, I'm like, that is just,
I can't believe, like,
rubbish.
people.
Like, why you think, right, you think it's okay to stand at the end of my bed after what I've just gone through, and you can see I am an absolute, like, I'm not okay with this. I am broken. And try and justify what's just gone down. Like, get out of my space. This is not the time and place, and I don't, you know. So anyway, it was just, as you can imagine, postpartum was just, we were not off to a great start. Sean and I have no family support where we are here. Our families are really far south. We have no one around, so it was just him and I. Sean was doing his very best to do whatever he could for me. No one had, I hadn't thought to ask, but no one had explained to me how the antibiotics work. And I knew that she had to receive them for 48 hours. But I thought it was like at this 48-hour mark, they could check to see if there was any infection and things were okay. But I then learnt later that no, you can sort of assess the growth of, you know, and the chance of infection over that 48 hours and make a decision at any point to say, let's stop. And I found the antibiotics so distressing. And look, that might be okay for other people, and that's totally fine. Like, that's a personal decision to make. But I had just, for me, I just had this beautiful new baby, and she'd been cut out of my tummy. And they'd put a board on her arm and a cannula in, and they were coming in every few hours and pumping this stuff through her body. And I knew the effect it would have on her gut and just kill off all that beautiful microbiome that, you know, it was just, it was so distressing. And I had a couple of times where I'd say to a midwife, no, that's it, like no more. And then they'd send someone else in and they'd convince me to just, you know, let's just monitor it for a bit longer. So, she received the full dose, and then she didn't pass her, like, jaundice test, and then she spent 24 hours in that little crib. Like, it was just everything. So when we finally got out of the hospital, I really struggled with breastfeeding in terms of her latching. She was a real colicky baby. You know, we were told she had thrush and then told she had ties, and we were trying to do all the things. And I put a lot of it down to her birth and antibiotics and just the effect that has on her gut. And we had I had a really, really rough postpartum. And breastfeeding was this one thing that I felt like I had left. Like, as much as I struggled with it, it was the one thing I could do for Nina, to breastfeed and breastfeed as much as possible and breastfeed although my nipples were falling apart, you know, and to have her in bed, to, you know, we were co-sleeping, we were breastfeeding. I was trying to just make up for all this that I felt like I had lost. And we did, and we had in the end, a wonderful long breastfeeding journey. But her birth was, it was utterly traumatic.
Holy moly!
So I knew, sort of leaving the hospital with Nina, that I would never, ever put myself through that.
Gosh, and it just makes me so, like, a lot of things, but so angry, because there are so many. You know, I've had quite a few women on the podcast, that I've, you know, heard other stories of women in rural/remote areas that their closest hospital, they've experienced a very traumatic birth, and then there's no other freaking option apart from to free birth. Like, really? Like, do the maths, people. Oh my gosh, it's so frustrating. It makes me so angry that home birth is pulled apart and private midwives are pulled apart and women that choose to free birth are pulled apart. But this obstetrician just, just gone on about living her life, thinking she's the savior of all babies and women. All hail obstetrician.
Right.
How disgusting. And I think that's absolutely disgusting isn't even a strong enough word to make that comment about the Botox. And I mean, that kind of just ties back into that people pleasing and, how we're raised as young girls to, be the good girl and look a particular way, and how outrageous, atrocious. I don't have enough words. Yeah.
It's just not okay. And I think as well, for this particular doctor, like, she knew. It wasn't like a secret. I was so distraught. She knew that this was not how I wanted to approach birth, and that things had gone, everything that I didn't want to happen had happened at this point. And then to sort of even just go through that experience, and I hadn't had a like, it's such an, I think because C-sections are so common, like, I mean, we're living in a world where, almost what is it? It's almost half the population of, first-time mums are going in and coming out with scars. Like, it's, you hear about it, it's just a C-section, but it's not. Like, it's really, and it's so daunting to be lying on a table in an operating room when you haven't been in that
and
environment
strapped down before. And the trauma. I hear that so frequently, the trauma of people just talking about their days as if this is not one of the most important moments of your life, that this is not, as if this is not like psychologically transformational. Just, I think, it makes me so angry. But I'm so happy that, you did eventually figure out breastfeeding, because breastfeeding is hard. And like, when you've had a birth experience like that, it's not like it's setting you up for like a good time. You're kind of starting like 5 steps back, and you've got to work so much harder. So that's, quite incredible, really. And even, quite incredible, like the, transformation that you went on so late in pregnancy, because for so many women, they just don't question it. Because I guess part of that good girl thing like plays into that, and the ultimate trust that we have in every single doctor ever, when that's, there's bad doctors out there just as there's bad people, bad midwives. And
it really, like, there's something about it that, I mean, choosing to birth in a hospital environment, you're obviously, there are hospital policies, rules and regulations that midwives and doctors, in order to keep their license, their jobs, they have to adhere to, right? That's a reality. And I guess I wish more first-time mums, or just mums in general going into that environment, were aware of that. But then when it, on a more personal level, it depends on their worldview. Like, this particular, if I'd had another one of the doctors, who's to say that that's necessarily how that would have gone? Like, there's so much, there's a real personal aspect to it. Like, this particular doctor, I could tell from that very first appointment, we were not aligned. Like, your approach to your job was not necessarily, we weren't going to line up. And I think I find that hard, because I think there's a real spectrum when it comes to that, and people's worldview on birth, and, how medically managed it needs to be, how dangerous it is.
Yeah. I also can't, that just reminded me of the pool. That made me also very angry. So at what point, because, it comes to, being pregnant with Lola, at what point did you start to then think, well, what's going to happen next time? Like, what are my options? Like, how did that journey start to evolve?
So I knew pretty well from my birth with Nina that I wasn't going back to that hospital, but I wasn't going back to hospital again. It's funny, I don't hold a lot against that hospital in particular, just the system and my experience within it. But I had really gravitated towards home birth. And I guess a lot of the, as I went on throughout my early motherhood journey with Nina, a lot of the things that I started to trust my intuition more, and we were very much a breastfeeding, co-sleeping. So we had that sort of arrangement. Nina was sort of on me all the time. And we grew a really close bond over that first year of life. And I guess I started to gain the confidence of, looking for, I hate to even say alternative ways, because that's just, it's not how I see it now, but it was a bit like that. So I thought, I'm going to home birth the next baby we have. And when we finally got to a point where we thought, we're ready for another, we fell pregnant with Lola. And it's interesting. I was just in a different space. Like, even when we sort of made this call that, yes, let's try for another baby, I said to Sean at the time, I was like, look, I know in my body I'm ovulating right now. Like, let's try. And we did, and we fell pregnant. And with Nina, it was very much like ovulation tests and, tracking it in my phone. So that was actually like the first part of my pregnancy where I really just went, no, listen to what's going on in your body. And I did. And, I sort of over the first few weeks, I just sort of got through that. I wasn't as sick as I was with Nina, but I was still quite nauseous. And I had reached out early on to a private midwife in Airlie Beach. So that's about 5 hours away. And I thought, that's what I'm going to do. I'd had one of my best friends who's a midwife. She had a baby about 6 months prior through a private midwife, had a home birth, and had a lovely experience. So I reached out to this midwife, and she seemed great, seemed like a great fit, had availability. Thought, fantastic, that's what I'm going to do. So I sort of just hung tight. And then I hadn't heard much more. And at around 11 weeks pregnant, I reached out again. And I had the weirdest 24 hours. So I got this text message back from the midwife to say, look, Eliza, I'm really sorry, but I'm actually not offering midwifery services anymore. Like, she'd taken a total different career path and had stopped what she was doing to do something else. And then I sort of went, shit. And then because at this point, there's not many midwives available, so you have to jump on them early on. The other midwife in that area was on holidays for the time that I was due. And I was like, oh, my God, what am I going to do? And then I considered the Sunny Coast, which is a 10-hour drive from where we are. I sort of researched a few private midwives in that area, and a couple that I felt I aligned with, I reached out to. They were booked out. I was like, oh, my God, what am I going to do? And then I had gone to bed that night. I know this sounds very woo-woo.
No, please. I love woo-woo. It also just speaks to we don't hear about woo-woo enough, because it's like it's a thing.
It's got to be a thing. But I went to bed that night. I'd never had a birth dream before, and I had a dream that I was giving birth to a baby boy, funny enough, but in the shower at home, and no one else was around, and it was just me. And then the next day, I hadn't even, it's funny, my phone couldn't have heard it because I hadn't spoken about free birth or I hadn't Googled anything, but something had popped up, and it was what was it? It might have been, it was a podcast notification.
Oh,
it was
gave me chills.
They were talking to, it was something about, it was free birth related. And then I just thought, what is going on? It was almost like I just felt like someone was holding a sign up in front of me saying, free birth. And at this point, I free birth was something I remember I've mentioned to Sean before, and he was kind of like, yeah, look, I'm for home birth. I don't think we'd free birth. And I was like, yeah, nah. Because to me, free birth was something that like tree hugging hippies did, right? Honestly, like it felt too, and I don't mean that in a bad way. I mean, like, I'm not brave enough for that. I'm too, like, I'm not wild enough. I'm too.
Well, I think it's also normal, seen, in the ways that you said, but also a sort of ignorance or irresponsibility or something like that as well, right? Yeah.
100%. Yeah, 100%. Like, I just felt like that wasn't an option. And then, I had this weird 24 hours. And then I remember I started reading, I downloaded a book, and I can't remember the name of the lady. I think it's Nadine someone, but they wrote a book literally that's just free birth stories. Cool. They're just sharing women's stories on free birth. And then I just went down the free birth rabbit hole from there pretty much. And then I remember Sean coming home from work maybe a week later. One night I sat down, I said, I want to have a serious chat about this. And by the end of that chat, it was like, we're doing it. We're on board. Like, I can't believe this, but let's just roll with it. So I had the most incredible pregnancy. Like, I had chosen to just be pregnant, and my approach to it was that if something came up that I felt I needed assistance with, then I would seek that out. But when it came to regular scans and tests and, I chose to opt out. And I felt the need so fiercely just to protect my peace around this pregnancy. Like, I had this pressure that this was it. Like, this was my moment of redeeming my birth. And then, I had the most wonderful pregnancy. And we had planned that Nina, we obviously don't have any family up here, that Nina would be a part of that birth. And I remember that was sort of something that caused me a bit of uncertainty because, she was 2, and I thought, I don't know how you're going to respond to this going on, and if it's in the middle of the night, and she would wake up very frequently overnight, and how are we going to approach that? But we basically just went into it, and I said to Sean, this birth is for me. Like, Sean knew where he stood in this. It was there as support when I needed it, but I wanted no one to touch me. I wanted no one to talk to me unless, I wanted to be, I say that, but I wanted to be at home in my space doing what we would normally do. But I just didn't want anyone to interfere. So I said to Sean, if she's not coping, you go with her, and you leave me on my own. I'm happy to do this on my own. Wow. And I'd even considered like having someone else in the space. And in the end, I just couldn't even risk it. I thought, no, I need to do this for me. So I'm kind of, I guess, fast forwarding. There wasn't an awful lot that was, super wild that happened in my pregnancy. I did lie to most people. That's something I should mention. I very much needed to protect this, and because we live in such a small community, some people knew what I was doing, like close friends, and look, it might have gotten out a little bit, and people were sort of, I think, questioning behind my back what was actually going on. But if people asked, I'd say, look, I'm having a home birth. Like, I'm having birth here. I'm giving birth here at home. I have paid for a private midwife to come out, and they're going to stay in, because that is an option. It wasn't an option, but I just spun that.
Well, it's not worth it. Like, you can't. I mean, it's taken you this journey to find free birth, and they're not going to have that same time. Like, their response is going to be so raw and from not a place of being informed. So that 100% makes sense.
That's it. And I think I should just add as well, I mean, just like most other women that choose free birth, just want to defend it here. I think there is this stigma that goes with it, that you're irresponsible and you're just trying to sort of, heal this part of you from, especially if you've had a previous traumatic birth, that it's inconsiderate, it's selfish. I could not have taken more responsibility for my birth. I did so much work in terms of everything that I researched, everything. I felt I needed to know everything, but then I also had to pull back on that at some point as well. But then emotionally, I had to sit with it all. You know, I have an inherent belief that birth is safe. Occasionally, things go wrong. And there's no guarantees in birth, just like there's no guarantees in life, you know. I could go down to the shops and not make it home, you know, but I'm not keeping myself home because I'm too scared of making that trip or leaving the house with a hospital bag in the back of the car in case I get in an accident. Like, you can't live your life like that. And I'd taken on all that responsibility. I'd sat with what happens if my baby dies. What happens if something happens to me? You know, we're an hour away from a hospital. Like, that was a real thing that I had to sit with. But the risk was far greater for me to go into a hospital and the things that were going to happen to me in that environment than to give birth at home. So, I was in a really good space with it. And, you know, as little things would pop up, I'd work through those fears. And then, pretty well Lola's birth. I hadn't really had any super early labour signs. I had made a real conscious effort to do nothing, absolutely do nothing. There was no red raspberry tea. Nice. There was no going on any, you know, crazy walks. I was just resting, and I wanted to do absolutely nothing to bring on this labour. I just wanted it to happen how it was going to happen. And then I had woken one morning and I just felt that baby had sort of moved really low. Like, the lightning crotch was pretty intense over that day. By the end of that day, it was pretty, like, feeling pretty sore, but nothing else. I was getting regular tightenings, but there was no sort of pain with that. And then the next morning I woke up and this was 40 and, well, you know, I was pretty sure of my dates, but, you know, if we're talking dates, like, I was about 40 and 5, I think, with Lola. And I was willing to go to however, if this baby was going to be in there for 50 weeks, so be it. I woke, Sean had made me breakfast, and then I decided to do a little bit of cooking that morning. So Nina and I were going to make a cake for when the baby arrives. Cake. So we were going to make and freeze a cake, and I'd had a friend in town who just had a baby, and we were going to do some cooking for her. And I stepped into the kitchen and I quite literally just started getting out the bowls and ingredients. And I thought, I had a tightening, and I thought, there was a little bit of something with that. Okay, and then another one came, and I thought, and I popped my head around the corner to Sean. I said, I think there was a little bit of something there, you know, seeing, okay, he was all excited. And then I quite literally put the ingredients in the bowl, got the mixer out. I started mixing, and I had to stop and call Sean in because I couldn't. I was like, what is happening? Couldn't handle what was going on. And I took myself to the toilet and I tried to sit on the toilet, and I remember, like, holding onto both walls, just letting out this sound, like, what is going on? It was quite literally within 10 minutes. It had gone from nothing to just feeling like I was in it. I pretty well within minutes, I was in my bedroom.
What?
Jammies came off. I was walking around in circles, you know, like just making sound. And I remember I kept saying to Sean, I have terrible eyesight, and I was like, I just need to get my contacts in. And every time I'd come down off a wave of contraction, I go, right, and I need to just go to the bathroom and put my contacts in. And then I never made it. And I was like, what is going on? It was like there was no early labour. It's like it just went, 0 to 100, like, immediately. And at one point during my labour, I remember I managed to I'd come down, I managed to get on my phone and quickly Google, labours started, quickly, no breaks, or something like that. And the first thing that came up said, precipitous labour. And I went, yep. I knew what that meant, and I just cemented that in my brain. I was like, that's all it is, Eliza. Like, it might just be coming on hard and fast.
Wow.
And it did. So I labored in my bedroom, and I put some sort of I didn't do any hypnobirthing, nothing like that this time. I just wanted to be totally in my body. But I listened to like just some affirmation tracks in my ear. And I was just pacing around the room, holding my belly with a heat pack on it. And Nina was so funny. She'd like pop in, and then she'd start like making funny little animal sounds with me, and then she'd, dawdle back out. And then, I did that for a while. I had the, the yoga ball in there. I was sort of leaning up against the bed and using that to sort of sway my hips around. And then at some point I dug through my little birth box and put on the TENS machine for a bit. But at this point I was begging Sean to set up the pool. So we'd already blown it up. He just needed to take it out and put the water in. Anyway, I remember seeing him finally roll it past the door. I thought, okay, we're on here. And then maybe 10 minutes later, coming out into the lounge room, and he was making Nina like a wrap in the kitchen for lunch. I was like, what are you doing? Like, fill it up. And now when we talk back, like, Sean just assumed that it was ages away, and he was just trying to
keep Nina occupied. Yeah.
Like, you need to fill that pool up. So I think I started feeling things at about 10 a.m. and I think it was about 11:15, I was in the birth pool. The immediate relief of just feeling that warm water. Like, oh my God, I know I listen to birth stories, and sometimes it's not for people or it is for people, and it differs with different births, but oh my God, it was just my savior. And I was just so low in the water. I sort of went from being on my side to just sort of just being stretched out, like my face touching the water. And I was just in my zone. I sort of went between listening to affirmations and just sort of swaying in the water. And this was in the middle of the day. So I just want to note as well, like, there's something so incredible about my birth with Lola. It was amazing, but also so mundane. Like, the Wiggles were playing in the background. Nina was, opening the door and slamming the door and opening the blind and closing the blind, and Sean was running around making us snacks, and it was just like a very normal Tuesday midday situation in our house. And I was just in the corner of the dining room having a baby. And, and then I was labouring beautifully. I was just, it was lovely. And then I remember, oh God, what happened next? I think that's right. I don't remember like a transition point at all. I just sort of remember not being able to relax. I was really focused on every time I'd have a contraction just to really relax my body. And all of a sudden I was like, why can't I relax? Like, why is everything just so intense around that area? And then I realised, maybe after 2 or 3 of those, that it was actually my body pushing. And then the minute I realised that, I was like, all right,
oh my gosh.
I remember saying to Sean, I think I'm pushing. Like, he's like, what do you mean you think you're pushing? I'm like, I think I'm pushing. Like, it feels different. And it's shifted from this feeling of a contraction to like just bearing down, like just pushing. And it was almost like relief. And then I sort of instinctively moved from this low position to up against the pool. And I was really grunting my way through each contraction. And actually something I want to mention that really helped me through this labour that I had no intention of using was the horse lips. So I'd never done that before, and I remember just partway through a contraction thinking to myself, whatever, like, let me just give it a go. I don't know what magic is in that technique, but like,
you know, I had somebody on the podcast recently where her partner she was in labor and her partner was like, oh, horsey lips, but she was so like caught up in transition that she made a sound of a horse instead. I thought that was so good.
oh, that's so good. Well, horses have it figured because that, I don't know what it was. Like, sound was definitely, you know, I was like that with my labour with Nina as well. Like, I need to make sound. It's just it just helps so much. But these horse lips, I tell you, I look back on the video and I'm, you know, it just gets higher and higher.
Yeah. That's so good.
That really helped me through. So, but yeah, I was very much in that bearing down stage. And I remember I could, you know, really start to feel this baby coming out of my bum. I was definitely birthing it out my bum. And then I could feel everything open up and baby was coming down. And I remember saying to Sean, like, can you see the head? Can you see it? Like, I'm pretty sure I was just so elated. Like, I can't explain. It was the happiest birth. Like, I was like, can you see that? Can you see the head? And he's like, oh, no. And he's got his little fishing net and he's just very delicately, like, skipping out little bits of poo and trying, you know, it was beautiful. It's funny. I look back at this video and it's like, you can hear, you can see him, like, just delicately scoop it out. And then you hear this, like, tap, tap, tap. He's just tapping it on.
Oh,
really just,
that's so sweet.
It was so funny, but I remember saying, like, can you see it? He's, oh, no. And then I said to him, just, can you feel? Because at that point I'd put my fingers in and I'd felt the top of the head. And he's like, yeah, is that it? And I'm saying, yeah, that's the head. And he's like, oh my God. Like, he was just, I don't think he believed me that it was happening. You know, I think I'd set him up for thinking it was going to be at least 12 hours, if not much longer. He's like, oh my God, it's less than a finger away. And then, I pretty well pushed for about 15 minutes. I remember feeling that ring of fire and I sort of instinctively just put my hand and just supported my perineum. And, she came through and I just love looking back at the birth footage because the minute her head was born, that just pure joy on my face. Like, I'm shocked, but I'm like the happiest woman ever giving birth. I'm like, her head's out. And Sean's just going, oh my God, I can see it. I can see its face. Or we didn't know it was a girl, but, you know, see its face. Nina at this point was standing up on the dining room chair, just like looking down in the pool. I'm going, Nina, like, look, it's... And then, I was like, I just need one more contraction. I had one more contraction. I remember I could feel her move and sort of partially come out. And then it was almost like I thought the contraction was like starting to stop. I was like, no. And it was almost like it kicked back in again, that same contraction, and out she came. And you know that feeling when you know you're pregnant, you know that there's a baby there, but it's not until you actually are looking at this baby, but that you're like, holy shit, I'm having a baby. I just remember like pulling her up through the water and just so slowly looking at her under the water. And I think I was looking to make sure there wasn't like a cord wrapped around anywhere that I needed to untie and untangle. And just looking at her face and just going, oh my God, it's a baby. Like, and pulling her up onto my chest. And it was just so surreal. And she let out an immediate gargle. And then Sean was just sobbing. I don't think I even cried. I think I was just so happy. Like, I just could not believe. I was like, what has just happened? That happened so quick. I think all in all, my birth was maybe 3.5 hours. And, you know, I'd sort of been, I guess, in labour with Nina for 40 hours. So it was quite
but your
fast.
body
And
had
then,
also then done a lot of work already. So if you're thinking about the memory of your body, like it already done it basically.
right. And I remember, I was holding on to that a little bit in hope, but also just
of course.
expecting
Well, it didn't happen to me. My second labour was longer, so
I remember
it didn't happen.
Sorry. But look, this was, I will say, like, you know, it was hard and fast though. Like, it was from the get-go, from that, you know, after sort of the first 10 minutes of feeling something, it was on, they were coming almost every single minute. It was.
Did you get to finish baking the cake? Did somebody finish the cake?
No. And I had all this pastry lined out. I was going to make this beautiful spanakopita for my friend, and that never happened. So no, she never got the cake. But yeah, it was just so surreal. And as soon as she came up, it's really, it makes me emotional. But I look back at the footage. As soon as she came up, I just remember I would look straight to Nina, and she's on the dining room table with her arms out like this, like arms out wide with the biggest smile on her face. And she just goes, baby. And I was just going, Nina. Like, it was just all focused on Nina. It was like, this is your baby, Nina. This is your baby. You know, like, it was this. I felt like it healed all of us. Like, obviously me, a big part of me, but Sean hugely. But it was also like it was for Nina. It was, and just for her to be a part of such a beautiful, normal birth. And I say normal, I mean, you know, it was our normal. But for her to be a part of that, and it was just so wonderful. And anyway, she let out a gargle, and then not long after it all, let out a cry. And and I, you know, as you do, like, completely forgot to even check for the sex. So I remember saying to Sean, put the phone down, like, get in the pool. He's going, you've got to check to see what we've had. And, sure enough, checked, and I was convinced it was a little boy. And no, we had a girl, and I was just so excited. And Nina got into the pool, and, my placenta, again, that took me by surprise. It was maybe like 10 minutes after I had a contraction and my placenta was born. I'm saying to Sean, my placenta. And he's like, what do you mean? I was like, it's out. And he's like, it's out? Like, what is happening? It was all just happening quicker than we could process it. And it was beautiful. So my little Lola was born in our dining room. Nina got in the pool and had a cuddle and straight to the breast. And then we moved to the Sean had set up a mattress on the floor in our lounge room, and he'd very sort of gently guided me onto that after, I don't know, maybe half an hour in the pool. And we were just wrapped up with warm blankets and had a placenta attached in a bowl. And it was honestly, Elsie, it was magic. Like, it just healed so much trauma, but it was also just, it was the best. It was the best. It was the absolute best. And it was also just perfect for us. It was just like we'd gone about this very normal day in our household, and in the middle of it, had a baby.
I just love what you said about, having the wiggles on in the background and it just being like the most mundane sort of day. And I think, like, it's so many ways what it's meant to be. It's not meant to be like this, thing that you can control and try and, like, manage. And, like, how, if that's your normal day to day that, you're running around and Nina's got the wiggles on and you're making sandwiches and whatnot, like, that is your safe place. That's the usual. That's the norm of your life.
100%.
Going into a place. I mean, oh, gosh, I don't have to say it. We all, if you're listening to this podcast, I feel like that the hospital environment is just not that. And that's not conducive with physiological labour birth. But two things. Number one, that does make me very frustrated for all the women out there in Australia. Obviously, there's so many areas of Australia that don't have access to private midwives, let alone, I mean, even you yourself, like even with all of this, professional indemnity insurance saga and whatever else is happening, people don't seem to, the people in power don't seem to understand that a lot of women do actually plan their births or their babies around what kind of experience they want, especially in the home birth world. So if you're saying like, maybe you can't access a private midwife in 12 months time, well, what does that mean? That you delay having a baby for 12 months? There's so many factors. But like from a rural, remote sense, like that makes me so frustrated that there's I seriously have heard many stories of, traumatic experiences in a hospital, not necessarily because it is a rural remote hospital, just because that probably is the only hospital. But also I interviewed a home birth midwife from South Africa the other day because I'm doing this Home Birth Around the World series, and she said that last year all privately practicing midwives in South Africa got told that it was now illegal to support vaginal birth after cesareans at home. Illegal.
It's just... can I just mention this one thing? I don't think I've sort of brought it up, but I did not have any fear throughout my pregnancy with Lola around a uterine rupture, which is obviously like the number one thing.
About.
I had other fears pop up, but that was always there, but it was something that I was totally felt okay with. And I don't want to quote it exactly, but there's a beautiful article that Rachel Reed wrote, I think quite a few years ago now. I think it's VBAC, making a mountain out of a molehill. And she mentioned something in there, and this just sticks with me when I think of something like that, is that she basically doesn't get the fuss that people make over a woman having a VBAC and all the extra monitoring and, not supporting her birth choices around that, when there's just as much, actually there's more risk as a first-time mum going in, so no previous cesarean, and having a placental abruption or a cord prolapse. So if this is how we treat women wanting to have a VBAC, shouldn't we just treat all women like that then? Risk is different for everyone, and that's for each person to weigh up and decide what risk they're comfortable with. But
to take the choice away.
Take the choice away. That makes me so angry.
Yeah. And that's when you find that, people then start to look at ways to get around that. And I mean, free birth is around that. So I think, your story is quite incredible, and I just really love it, because of, how it all played out, like the contrast between both of them, and just, I wonder what that obstetrician would think, or any that agency midwife, like what,
But I often play over like little scenarios in my head if I would ever come across this doctor again. But no, I don't think
I will fight her.
Let that, It's so hard, hey, because we do live in a small community, so that's another thing. Like we all, hard to avoid sometimes.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's probably a factor, honestly, that is quite impactful when you're talking about birth trauma in rural, remote areas, is that there's a very big chance that you come across this person again. So in terms of reporting and, things like that, like often, those things can be made anonymous, but like small towns work a little bit differently.
Yeah, they do.
So it's just like another layer of complexity to the whole birth trauma, epidemic in a way, really. Yeah, but like incredible. What a badass. That's so good.
I'm so proud of
Yeah.
myself, and just this experience has just given me so much confidence. And it's just, my postpartum with Lola has just been like, I've just gone into it this really assured mum and person. Like, I don't, we're just riding the wave together, and it's just been wonderful. I've blocked out all the noise. It's like, when you're not turning to someone else to, tell you what's going on with yourself and your baby, and what you're just listening to your intuition. It's a really, really powerful thing. And I also although that's how I came to make my decision to free birth, and feeling like I was sort of backed against a wall in terms of maternity care options, I do just want to say now, having gone through this experience, if there was a private midwife available tomorrow, I still think I would choose this path again to free birth. It was just the most, just to have my people in my space, meaning just Sean and just Nina, but they are my family, or, we're my family at that point. It was just, it was just perfect. So, and again, if there's anyone listening that feels like they were not wild enough, they're not brave enough, they're not, like there shouldn't be a stigma with free birth. Like, it's just birth. It's just birth. That's all it is. Yeah, and birth is pretty fucking awesome.
I couldn't agree with you more. I'm so grateful for you sharing your story. I know quite often, like, is the case with people finding birth at home that they've experienced such, traumatic experiences, and I'm really grateful for you sharing your experience. It's a very important story to put out there. And I think it gives like people, a lot of hope, and also like restores faith in people that might have also had a similar experience, because there's plenty of women out there that have that, a traumatic birth doesn't mean that you're going to have to go through that trauma again. You can change that. I just think you're a badass. And I'm so grateful. Thank you so much, Eliza.
Thank you. Thanks.